Seeds of Wisdom RV and Economic Updates Wednesday afternoon, July 23, 25. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com blog and become our supporter on Patreon. Good afternoon. Dinar recaps. Senate Republicans unveil draft bill for U.S. crypto market structure. Republican leaders on the Senate Banking Committee have introduced a discussion draft of legislation aimed at regulating the U.S. digital asset market. The proposal, titled the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, signals growing coordination between the Senate and House following the recent passage of the Clarity Act. Bridging the House and Senate approaches. Senators Tim Scott, chair of the Senate Banking Committee, and Cynthia Lummis, chair of the Digital Assets Subcommittee, released the draft on Tuesday alongside Senators Katie Britt and J.D. Vance. They emphasized that the legislation builds on the momentum from the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, which passed the House of Representatives on July 17 with bipartisan support. "My colleagues in the House and Senate and I share the same goal: provide clear rules of the road for digital assets," said Senator Scott. The move suggests that Senate Republicans are seeking to align their legislative efforts with the House, which recently passed 3 major crypto bills. Of those, only the Genius Act, focused on stablecoins, has been signed into law by President Donald Trump. What the draft bill proposes. The Senate's version of the market structure bill mirrors key parts of the House's Clarity Act. Both pieces of legislation propose updates to the Securities Act of 1933, arguing that the nearly century-old framework is outdated for regulating modern digital assets. Key elements in the Senate draft include clarification on ancillary assets. These refer to digital assets that do not meet the definition of securities, helping differentiate between tokens and traditional financial instruments. Increased collaboration between the SEC and CFTC. The proposal encourages regulatory agencies to work together in creating a cohesive framework for digital asset markets. New disclosure requirements tailored to digital assets and blockchain-based investment vehicles. Bipartisan momentum and legislative hurdles. According to Liat Shetrit, Vice President of Global Policy and Regulation at Elliptic. With bipartisan backing, the Clarity Act heading to the Senate signals increasing momentum behind comprehensive crypto policy and growing alignment on the need for market structure rules, even if full passage may take longer as Congress breaks for the summer. Although more than 70 House Democrats supported the Clarity Act, any revisions made by the Senate could reopen debates or trigger resistance in the House during reconciliation. Additionally, while Republicans hold a slim majority in the Senate, the path to full passage remains uncertain amid ongoing political tensions. What comes next? Senators Scott and Lummis previously indicated their intention to move the market structure legislation through the Senate before October 2025. If successful, this would mark a historic step toward a comprehensive digital asset framework in the United States. As the regulatory environment around cryptocurrencies continues to evolve, this bill may play a central role in shaping how blockchain, tokens, and decentralized finance operate within U.S. financial law. Ripple's chief legal officer, Stuart Alderoty, is sounding the alarm about the urgent need for greater crypto education in the United States. As president of the newly launched National Cryptocurrency Association, NCA, Alderoty reports that a majority of Americans who don't yet hold digital assets find crypto research overwhelming, a significant barrier to wider adoption as demand surges in 2025. Filled right pointing small triangle. 55% of non-crypto holders find crypto research confusing and difficult to navigate. Filled right pointing small triangle. 68% of Americans are interested in using crypto but don't know where to begin. Filled right pointing small triangle. 42% of U.S. adults are likely to use crypto in 2025, but education remains a hurdle. NCA aims to close the knowledge gap. Launched in March 2025 with a $50 million grant from Ripple. The National Cryptocurrency Association is now leading the push to simplify access to digital assets through improved education and regulatory clarity. Alderoty emphasized that clear, jargon-free resources are essential for Americans to responsibly adopt and benefit from blockchain-based financial tools. With 1 in 5 Americans already using crypto, the NCA's mission is to demystify the landscape, especially now. That the US has passed landmark legislation like the Genius Act on stablecoins and the Clarity Act on digital asset classification. Filled right-pointing small triangle 49% of Americans still lack basic knowledge of how crypto work. Filled right-pointing small triangle 40% cite fraud concerns as a major reason for hesitation. Filled right-pointing small triangle 30% say they want simple, trustworthy platforms to learn about crypto safely. Tied to legislative reform, the NCA's initiative aligns closely with recent federal moves toward establishing a clear regulatory framework. The Genius Act created definitions for compliant stablecoins, while the Clarity Act delineates the roles of the SEC and CFTC in digital asset oversight. Ripple, through both its leadership and strategic funding, is positioning itself as a key voice shaping post-regulatory crypto education in the U.S. Final thought: as Washington advances crypto legislation, the education gap becomes the next frontier. Through the NCA, Ripple aims to guide Americans toward secure and informed crypto participation. For non-crypto holders who've been on the sidelines, 2025 may be the year barriers fall, not just through laws, but through understanding. With BRICS leaving South Africa, Nigeria emerges as the new favorite. The recent pivot away from South Africa by the BRICS alliance marks a decisive shift in the bloc's African engagement strategy. As South Africa faces mounting internal and external challenges within the bloc, Nigeria is rapidly emerging as the new focal point of BRICS expansion on the continent. BRICS expansion shifts toward Nigeria. In January 2025, Nigeria formally accepted its invitation to join BRICS as a partner country. The announcement, made by the Brazilian government, positioned Nigeria among a growing list of BRICS partner nations including Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Thailand, Uganda, and Uzbekistan. Since then, major BRICS members, China, Russia, Brazil, and India, have begun strengthening bilateral relations with Nigeria. This transition signals a broader realignment of BRICS priorities within Africa, especially as South Africa's role in the bloc comes under scrutiny. Economic opportunities for Nigeria. Nigeria's inclusion opens new doors for trade, investment, and geopolitical engagement. With a population nearing 220 million and its status as the largest economy in Africa, Nigeria stands to benefit from preferential access to BRICS markets. According to development economist Stephen Onyewu, Nigeria could use its BRICS partnership to garner the group's support in matters that affect Nigeria globally. For instance, there have been requests for African countries to be included as permanent members, without veto power, of the UN Security Council. South Africa and Nigeria have been touted as potential candidates. BRICS's departure from a South Africa-centric model is making space for new partnerships and a more diversified African strategy. South Africa's waning influence. South Africa's standing within BRICS has been impacted by growing internal divisions and international policy misalignments. Disagreements within the bloc, particularly over relations with Western powers, have further strained South Africa's leadership role. Currently, 3 African nations, South Africa, Egypt, and Ethiopia, are full BRICS members, while Nigeria, Uganda, and Algeria are designated partners. Experts suggest that BRICS is seeking more reliable economic collaborators, which has made Nigeria an increasingly attractive option. Technology transfer and economic diversification. Beyond trade, the partnership offers Nigeria access to critical technologies from BRICS leaders such as China, India, and Brazil. Nigeria is keen to develop capacities in areas such as artificial intelligence, renewable energy, especially solar, blockchain and digital infrastructure. As Onyewu notes, Nigeria seeks to diversify its economy from reliance on the export of hydrocarbons. But Nigerian producers have had a hard time accessing global markets. The country should negotiate trade deals that provide access to BRICS markets, especially for agricultural and agro-processed products, arts, and crafts. This marks a new phase of South-South cooperation focused on practical development and knowledge sharing. something that was less emphasized during South Africa's tenure as the main BRICS representative in Africa. Strategic balance and future outlook. The shift toward Nigeria does not come without risks. Experts highlight the importance of a nuanced approach that maintains Nigeria's Western alliances while embracing new BRICS-driven opportunities. Nigeria stands to gain from a BRICS partnership, says Onyewu, but would have to carefully balance its domestic interests with those of its Western allies and BRICS. This careful diplomacy will be essential as Nigeria navigates its emerging leadership role in African geopolitics. The new BRICS African strategy, anchored in Nigeria, reflects a more distributed and inclusive model that may shape the continent's economic trajectory in the years ahead. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com blog and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: dinarrecaps.com